I had always believed in the promises he made, the vows we exchanged, and the life we built together. For years, I thought he was my everything, the man who would keep me safe, who'd always be there no matter what. When we were young, he promised that I'd never have to worry about a thing. I believed him. I built my world around those words. I put my own dreams aside to help him climb the ladder, cheering him through every late night and long morning. My job paid most of the bills, but that never bothered me. We were a team, or so I thought. Our life felt steady, predictable, until the day I lost my job. It happened on a gray Tuesday. I walked into work as usual and left with a cardboard box. The company was downsizing. I was no longer needed. 20 years of my life vanished with one HR meeting. I sat in my car afterward, staring at the severance papers, feeling like I was watching someone else's story unfold. All I could think was, how will I tell him? When I finally did, he didn't comfort me. He didn't even blink. His first words were, "What are we going to do now? Your job was the one keeping us afloat." His voice was sharp, cold, almost disgusted. I tried to explain it wasn't my fault, that I'd been let go, not fired. But he just shook his head. "You've been a burden for too long," he said. "Maybe it's time you figured it out on your own." Those words broke something in me. I had carried him for years, built him up, given him my everything. But in that moment, I realized that the man I thought I knew, the man who once swore he'd take care of me, didn't exist anymore. Maybe he never had. The days that followed blurred together. I applied to every job I could find, hoping one would stick. Each rejection hit harder than the last. Our house, once filled with laughter, turned into a cold shell. He barely spoke to me. I tried to talk, to fix things, but his answers were clipped, his tone dripping with contempt. It was as if losing my job had erased all my worth. One evening, I gathered the courage to confront him again. I found him sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone like I wasn't even there. "We need to talk," I said softly. "About what?" He muttered, not looking up. "Us," I whispered. "You've been so distant. I lost my job, but that doesn't mean I've lost everything." He finally looked at me, his eyes hard. "You should have been more careful. We have bills to pay. You were supposed to handle that." I stared at him, stunned. "I thought we were a team." "Not anymore," he said, and turned back to his phone. I went to bed that night feeling like a ghost in my own home. But lying there in the dark, I felt something shift inside me. He had given up on me, but maybe I didn't have to give up on myself. The next morning, I woke up with a strange calm. I moved through the house like an observer, seeing everything for what it really was, the life I'd built for him, not for me. I realized how small I had made myself to keep our world steady, and now with that world crumbling, I could finally see the truth. I didn't need him to survive. Weeks passed. I sold old furniture, downsized wherever I could, and started saving every dollar. When I found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, I took it without hesitation. Moving out of the house we'd shared for so long was terrifying, but it was also liberating. For the first time in decades, the air felt light. The new place was small and bare, but it was mine. I painted the walls soft cream, bought a second-hand couch, and placed a few books on the shelves. I didn't need more than that. Each evening, I'd sit by the window with a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker and feeling a tiny spark of peace. It wasn't much, but it was the beginning of something. A life built by me, for me. Still, he lingered in the back of my mind. Sometimes, when the loneliness hit, I'd hear his voice. The one that used to sound like comfort, but now only carried disappointment. I wondered if he ever thought about me, if he ever regretted what he'd said. I told myself it didn't matter. But deep down, a part of me still wanted him to care. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. His name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before answering. "I've been thinking about you," he said quietly. "I made a mistake. I was wrong to push you away." I said nothing, waiting for more. "I want to fix things," he continued. "Can we try again?" My chest tightened. After everything, he wanted another chance? "You left me when I needed you most," I said. "You broke your promise." "I know," he said, voice trembling. "But I can change. I'll do better." For a brief moment, I almost believed him. But then I remembered the cold silence, the contempt, the words that had cut so deep they still echoed. I took a breath. "I don't think I can," I said finally. "I've spent my whole life depending on you, but I don't need you anymore." "I'm better off without you." He didn't respond. I hung up, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. In the weeks that followed, I found a part-time job at a small cafe. The pay wasn't great, but it gave me purpose. I loved the rhythm of it, the hiss of the espresso machine, the quiet chatter of customers, the scent of fresh coffee. For the first time, I wasn't working to impress anyone. I was working for me. But sometimes when the cafe grew quiet, the old loneliness would creep back in. I'd think of our life together, not the arguments or the betrayal, but the small moments that once felt like love. It hurt to admit that I missed them. Yet I knew I didn't miss him. I missed who I thought he was. Then, one morning, he walked into the cafe. I froze behind the counter, the air sucked out of the room. He looked almost the same, just older, wearier. When our eyes met, he looked surprised, and then guilty. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said, voice low. "Can we talk? I miss you." "No," I said firmly. "We don't have anything left to say." He looked like he wanted to argue, but I didn't give him the chance. "You already lost me," I said quietly, "and I'm not coming back." I turned and walked away, my hands shaking, but my heart steady. When I looked out the window moments later, he was gone. For the first time, I didn't feel grief. I felt release. The days that followed were quiet. I threw myself into work, and in the evenings, I read books I hadn't touched in years. I started to rediscover parts of myself that had long been buried. The woman who loved poetry, who found peace in long walks, who used to dream without fear. I joined a yoga class, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. At first I felt awkward, self-conscious, like I didn't belong. But slowly I began to relax. There was something about the stillness, the deep breaths, the feeling of being present in my own body that felt healing. Each class left me lighter, more centered. I was learning to trust myself again. Money was still tight, but I managed. The cafe job didn't cover much, so I started tutoring kids in the evenings. It was exhausting, but fulfilling. I liked feeling useful again. I liked knowing I was capable, that I didn't need anyone to save me. One afternoon, an old friend named Sarah reached out. We hadn't spoken in years. My marriage had slowly pulled me away from everyone who wasn't part of his world. When we met for coffee, she listened as I told her what had happened. When I finished, she smiled gently. "You're stronger than you think, Margaret," she said. "You've survived what would have broken a lot of people. Don't forget that." Her words stayed with me long after she left. That night, I sat in my small apartment, the city humming softly outside, and whispered to myself, "I am stronger than I think." In the following weeks, something inside me began to shift. I stopped seeing my past as a failure and started seeing it as a lesson. I wasn't defined by what he had done. I was defined by how I chose to move forward. That's when I decided to enroll in a small business course at the community college. It felt ridiculous at first, sitting in a classroom surrounded by people half my age. But I stuck with it. The more I learned, the more I realized how capable I was. I wasn't just rebuilding. I was reinventing. It wasn't easy. There were nights I came home from work and classes completely drained, my body aching, my mind buzzing with doubts. But every time I thought about quitting, I reminded myself of that night. The night I lay in bed, feeling worthless, believing I couldn't go on. I had made it through that. I could make it through this too. Slowly, my life began to take shape again. Not the life I had before, something quieter, smaller maybe, but mine. I began to feel a peace I hadn't known in years. And one morning, when I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I saw it. Not the tired, broken woman I once was, but someone new. Someone whole. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. Months passed quietly. Between my cafe shifts, my evening classes, and the small joys I carved out for myself, life began to feel lighter. I still had moments when the loneliness crept in, but they no longer swallowed me whole. I had built a fragile kind of peace, and it was enough. Then one morning, something unexpected happened. He walked into the cafe again. Not my ex-husband. Someone new. He came every Thursday, always ordered black coffee, and always sat by the window with a notebook. One day, as I handed him his drink, he smiled and said, "You always remember my order." I laughed. "That's my job." "Still," he said, "it's nice to be remembered." His name was Paul. He was quiet, gentle, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. Our small exchanges turned into longer conversations about books, music, and life in general. There was no flirtation, no expectations, just an ease I hadn't felt in years. Over time, I found myself looking forward to those mornings. His calm presence felt like sunlight on cold skin. One afternoon, he asked if I wanted to join him for a walk after my shift. I hesitated, but something in me said yes. We walked through the park, the air crisp and clear, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his work as a freelance designer, how he'd lost his wife years ago and never thought he'd feel close to anyone again. His honesty touched me. I didn't tell him everything, not yet. My story still felt raw, like a wound that hadn't fully healed. But as the weeks passed, our walks became a quiet ritual. We met for coffee, strolled through bookstores, shared silence without awkwardness. It wasn't romance, not yet. It was companionship, simple and sincere. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a ghost of my past. I felt alive. Still, the past has a way of testing you just when you think you've outrun it. One evening, as I came home from class, I saw my phone blinking with a missed call. His name, my ex-husband's, glared up at me. My stomach tightened. I should have ignored it, but curiosity won. "Margaret," his voice cracked when I answered. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I didn't speak. "I've had time to think about everything," he continued. "I shouldn't have said those things. I shouldn't have pushed you away. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know." His voice was softer than I remembered, stripped of pride. For a moment, I felt the ache of old memories, the woman I had been, desperate for those words. But that woman no longer lived here. "I've already forgiven you," I said quietly. "Not for you, but for me. I had to let go to move on." He exhaled shakily. "I'm glad you did. I just wanted you to know I never stopped thinking about you." I closed my eyes. "Please don't," I whispered. "You need to live your life, and I need to live mine." When I hung up, a strange calm filled the room. That conversation, brief as it was, closed a chapter I hadn't realized was still open. For the first time, I felt no anger, no regret, only release. The next day, I told Paul about it. He listened quietly, his eyes steady. When I finished, he said, "You did the right thing. Some doors aren't meant to stay open." I smiled. I think I finally understand that. Life moved on, as it always does. My business course ended, and I began freelancing from home, helping small shops with bookkeeping and organization. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. The sense of independence thrilled me. Every invoice I sent, every dollar I earned, felt like another piece of myself reclaimed. Paul became a constant presence in my life, but he never pushed for more than I was ready to give. We spent slow weekends together, visiting art galleries, cooking dinner, tending to the small potted plants on my balcony. He was patient in a way I hadn't known a person could be, and in his patience, I began to heal. One night, as we sat in my living room with a bottle of wine, he looked at me and said, "You seem lighter lately." I smiled. Maybe because I finally stopped carrying things that weren't mine to carry. He reached across the table and took my hand. "You've been through so much, and yet here you are, stronger than ever." His words were simple, but they touched something deep inside me. For years I had measured my worth by what others saw in me, as a wife, an employee, a caretaker. Now, someone was seeing me for who I was, not what I could give. Still, I hesitated. Old fears don't vanish overnight. Some nights I'd lie awake, wondering if I could ever truly trust again. The thought of opening myself up fully terrified me. What if I got hurt again? What if I lost everything I had worked so hard to rebuild? But every time doubt crept in, Paul met it with kindness, not with promises, but with quiet consistency. He didn't ask for my trust. He earned it. Months later, I realized something remarkable. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. I started dreaming again. I wanted a home that was fully mine, something that symbolized the new life I'd built. I spent weeks searching until I found it. A small ivy-covered cottage at the edge of town with a wild garden and sunlight spilling through its windows. It wasn't grand, but it felt like peace. When I signed the papers, I cried, not out of sadness but gratitude. Every wall, every corner of that little house represented freedom, a life that was mine alone. When I showed Paul, his smile was wide and genuine. "It suits you," he said softly. "You've built something beautiful. It wasn't just a house. It was proof that I had made it through the storm. I filled it slowly, secondhand furniture, thrifted dishes, wildflowers in glass jars. Each item told a small story. My garden became my favorite place. I spent hours tending it, planting seeds with trembling hands and watching them grow strong. Every bloom felt like a reflection of my own healing. Sometimes, when the sun dipped below the horizon, Paul would join me on the porch. We'd sit in silence, listening to the crickets, content just to be. "I think I'm ready," I said one evening, breaking the quiet. He turned to me, his brow raised. "For what?" "To stop being afraid," I said softly. "To stop living in the shadow of what happened. I think I'm finally happy." He squeezed my hand gently. "You deserve that, Margaret." I looked out at the garden, at the soft glow of dusk spreading over the flowers, and felt a deep sense of peace. I wasn't the same woman who once begged for love that wasn't returned. I was someone who had learned to love herself first. From then on, life unfolded in quiet beauty. I worked from my little home office, spent weekends at the market, and met friends for coffee. Paul remained by my side, steady, kind, never demanding. Our relationship wasn't built on need or dependency, but choice, and that made all the difference. One autumn afternoon, as golden leaves drifted past my window, I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who sat in her car after losing her job, terrified and alone. I wanted to reach back through time and tell her, "You're going to be okay." Better than okay, because I was. The pain had shaped me, but it no longer defined me. The betrayal had taught me where not to place my trust. The loss had shown me what truly mattered. And love, real love, had finally found its way back to me, not through someone else, but through my own reflection. Sometimes Paul would ask, "Do you ever think about the past?" "Not the way I used to," I'd reply. "It's part of me, but it doesn't own me anymore." He smiled at that, and I could tell he understood. The days passed gently. I learned to enjoy my solitude, to find joy in small rituals, morning tea on the porch, the scent of lavender in the garden, the quiet hum of life unfolding at its own pace. I wasn't searching for perfection anymore. I was simply grateful. One evening, as Paul and I sat watching the sunset, he said, "You've come such a long way." "Do you realize that?" I looked out over the horizon and nodded. "Yes," I said. "And I wouldn't change a thing. Every mistake, every heartbreak, every tear led me here." He smiled and leaned closer. "Here looks good on you." We sat there in silence, the sky melting into gold and rose. I thought of all the promises that had once broken me, and how I had built something stronger from their shards. Peace, I realized, wasn't something given. It was something you earned. Through pain, through forgiveness, through the courage to begin again. I had earned mine. As night settled over the garden, I looked up at the stars and whispered to myself, "I'm home, and for the first time in my life, I truly was." Let us know in the comment, where are you watching from? Please subscribe to the channel Her Side of the Story. Thanks for watching until here.